Hello, friends. Today I want to tell you a story, one that feels familiar, yet strange at the same time. As I speak, I want you to listen closely and quietly fill in the blanks in your mind. Imagine a man whose name ends with the letters AM. He has a wife, and her name begins with S. Circumstances force them to leave their home, to walk away from the city they once belonged to, and they travel far toward the south. With them goes a relative, a younger companion, whose name starts with L. Their journey is not peaceful. Somewhere along the way, a powerful king from a distant land notices the woman. The last letter of this king's name is N. He takes her into his palace. What happens next feels tense, uncertain, almost tragic, but the story turns. The woman is freed. She escapes, and eventually, the husband and wife return together. Pause for a moment. Most people smile at this point because they think they already know the answer. Ram, Sita, Lakshman, and Raven, the Ramayana. It seems obvious. But now imagine the ground shifting under your feet when I tell you that the very same clues fit another story just as perfectly. A story of Abraham, Sarah, Lot, and Pharaoh. A story shared directly or indirectly by Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
This is the story of Prophet Abraham. Some time ago, I made a video on the Ramayana, and many of you loved it. That response made me think, why do these stories from different religions echo each other so strongly? Why do the same themes, exile, faith, loss, divine testing, appear again and again? And more importantly, why do we barely talk about these connections today? In the world we live in now, religion is often reduced to headlines, slogans, and fear. Politicians use it, media amplifies it. Hatred is manufactured by selectively quoting scriptures without context. And slowly, people forget that religions were once meant to answer the same human questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What is right? What is wrong? When people of one faith truly learn about another, something interesting happens, fear weakens, and empathy grows. To understand Abraham, we have to walk much further back in time, to the very beginning of the human story. You have heard the names Adam and Eve. In Islamic tradition, Adam is called Adam, and it is believed that God formed him from soil, breathed life into him, and made him a living being. Across this story, I will use different words for God, Allah, God, the Creator, but understand this clearly. We are always talking about the same one God. That is the foundation of monotheism. Centuries later, the artist Michelangelo tried to capture this moment in paint. In the Vatican today, his famous image shows God reaching out, touching Adam, passing life itself into him. After Adam was created, he was placed in the Garden of Eden, a place of abundance. Two trees stood there, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam was free to eat anything except the fruit of that second tree. Just one condition. Loneliness entered the picture. God created animals and birds, but none felt like a true companion. So Adam was put into a deep sleep, and from his own body, a woman was created. Adam called her Eve Ava, meaning life itself. Then came temptation. A serpent whispered to Eve, promising wisdom, enlightenment, power, telling her that the forbidden fruit would make her like God. She ate it, and Adam followed. When this disobedience came to light, consequences followed. The snake was cursed to crawl. The woman was told that childbirth would come with pain. Adam was told that life on earth would be labor, sweat, struggle. And with that, humanity was sent out of Eden. This story never really left us. You see it echoed in films, novels, and myths. Even modern science fiction films quietly borrow from it. The idea of loss, exile, and a second chance is deeply human. As generations passed, humanity multiplied, and according to the scriptures, corruption multiplied with it. Violence, injustice, and cruelty filled the earth. God, seeing this, decided to cleanse the world. Everything would be wiped away. Everything except one man, Noah, Anu. He was told to build an ark, to gather his family, and to bring pairs of every living creature. Rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. Waters covered the earth for months. Life disappeared, except for those on the ark. When the waters finally receded, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. Humanity was given another chance. What is astonishing is that this story does not belong to one religion alone. In Hinduism, King Manu is warned of a great flood by Matsya, an incarnation of Vishnu. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim. In Greek mythology, Deucalion survives Zeus's flood. Different cultures, different lands, the same memory echoing through time. After the flood narratives, history turns its focus to one man, Abram. Abram lived in a world filled with idols. His own father, Terah, made them. One story tells how Abram questioned idol worship by mocking it, breaking the idols, and placing the weapon in the hands of the largest one. When people accused him, he asked them why they worship beings that cannot speak or act. For this defiance, he was thrown into a fire and survived. This moment becomes a cornerstone. It explains why Judaism and Islam reject idol worship outright. But it also opens a deeper question. Do people really worship idols? Or do they use symbols to reach something beyond form? Hindus, for example, understand the idol as a doorway, not the destination. Just as a photograph reminds you of a loved one, an idol becomes a focus for devotion, not the object itself. Even the Bible contains moments where God instructs the creation of sacred images, cherubim, carvings, symbols. The issue was never form, it was forgetting what the form pointed toward. Religion also warns against another kind of idol: wealth, ego, desire. The Quran warns against worshipping possessions. Hindu scriptures warn against ego. Buddhism warns against attachment. The message is remarkably consistent. Now, return to Abram's journey. God tells him to leave his home and walk toward an unknown land. Abram obeys. With him go his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. Famine drives them toward Egypt. Fear drives Abram to ask Sarai to say she is his sister. Pharaoh takes her into his palace, and blessings fall upon Abram until disaster strikes Pharaoh's household. The truth is revealed. Sarai is returned. Abram leaves Egypt wealthier, but wiser. Later, Abram becomes Abraham. Sarai becomes Sarah. Promises are made, lands are promised. Nations are foretold. 2 sons are born, Ishmael and Isaac, and from this moment, history branches. Jews trace their lineage through Isaac and Jacob. Christians trace their spiritual lineage through Isaac and Jesus. Muslims trace theirs through Ishmael and the building of the Kaaba. 3 religions, one Father, one God, and yet, instead of unity, we often see division. Scriptures meant to guide are twisted into weapons. Verses revealed in moments of war are quoted as if they command eternal violence. But context matters. Always. No scripture commands the killing of innocents. What we see today is not religion, it is manipulation. Great scholars across religions have said this again and again. Faith, at its core, was meant to soften hearts, not harden them. And that brings us back to where we started. A man, a woman, a journey, a king, a test, a return. The same patterns repeating across civilizations, reminding us that our stories are far more connected than we are taught to believe. After Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael into the desert, the story slows down, almost as if it wants you to feel the weight of that decision. A father watching his son walk away, not because he wants to, but because he believes God has commanded it. In the desert, when water runs out and hope feels thin, Hagar cries out not to people, but to God. And help comes from where she least expects it. A spring appears. Life continues. Ishmael survives. And quietly, without noise or spectacle, a new lineage begins to grow in the sand. Back with Abraham, time passes. Sarah, now old and tired of waiting, hears something unbelievable, that she will have a child. She laughs. Not out of mockery, but out of exhaustion. The kind of laughter that comes when hope has disappointed you too many times. And yet, the promise is fulfilled. Isaac is born. His very name carries that laughter within it. Years later, another test arrives, one far heavier than exile, famine, or separation. Abraham is asked to offer his son in sacrifice. Different traditions remember this moment differently. In Jewish and Christian traditions, the son is Isaac. In Islamic tradition, it is Ishmael. But notice something important. The core of the story does not change. A father walks with his son. A knife is raised. Faith is stretched to its breaking point. And at the last moment, God intervenes. A sacrifice is replaced. Life is spared. The message is subtle, but powerful. God does not desire blood. God desires surrender of ego, attachment, and absolute trust. This single moment echoes every time a believer is asked to choose between blind desire and moral submission. As generations pass, Abraham fades from the scene, but his shadow stretches across centuries. His grandson Jacob wrestles with God and is renamed Israel. His descendants become tribes. They migrate, suffer, rise, fall, and wander again. In another land, centuries later, a man named Moses will hear a voice from a burning bush. Laws will be given, covenants will be renewed. Much later still, in a small Roman province, a child will be born whom Christians will call the Son of God. They will see in him the fulfillment of ancient promises. His message will be love, forgiveness, and inner transformation. He will challenge power, comfort the weak, and unsettle authority. And eventually, he will be executed not as a conqueror, but as a sacrifice in the eyes of his followers. Centuries after that, in the deserts of Arabia, another voice will speak to another man. Muhammad will be told to recite, to remind, to return humanity to the worship of one God, the God of Abraham. The Kaaba, once filled with idols, will be cleared. Hubal will fall, and history will turn once more. And here's where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because instead of remembering Abraham as a bridge, people began using him as a border. Instead of saying, "We come from the same root," they started saying, "Only our branch is true." Words like believer and disbeliever slowly lost their spiritual meaning and became weapons. Context vanished. Power stepped in. Fear followed. Verses revealed during war were lifted out of time and read as eternal commands. Metaphors were mistaken for instructions. Symbols were taken literally. And people who had never opened a scripture started forwarding interpretations on their phones, convinced they were defending God. But if you step back, far back, you notice something strange. God never asks people to hate in his name. Humans do that themselves. God never demands the killing of innocents. Humans justify it afterward. Again and again, scriptures warn against arrogance, against ego, against turning oneself into the center of the universe. And yet that is exactly what people do while claiming humility. Even atheism, in this context, becomes part of the conversation, not as an enemy, but as a mirror, a rejection of corrupted religion, not necessarily of truth itself. Many who say they don't believe in God are actually rejecting the God presented to them angry, violent, tribal, not the God described by Abraham, who speaks in silence, tests hearts, and asks people to walk without maps. When you look closely, the real divide is not between religions. It is between those who seek truth and those who seek control. Between those who read deeply and those who quote loudly. Between faith as surrender and faith as identity politics. And that brings us back to you, listening to this story. Because this is not just Abraham's journey. It is yours. Leaving comfort, questioning inherited beliefs, facing fear, choosing empathy over certainty. Learning that God might be larger than any single language, book, or ritual. The question is not which religion is right. The real question is, are we brave enough to see how connected we are? And so, friends, we arrive at a moment of reflection. These stories from Adam and Eve to Abraham, from Noah's Ark to the building of nations, aren't just ancient tales. They are mirrors, showing us the patterns of human life, the struggles of faith, the tests of morality, and the consequences of our choices. They teach patience, resilience, trust, and compassion. They remind us that the divine is not confined to a single place, a single name, or a single tradition. What matters is not the walls we build between ourselves, but the bridges we recognize in the shared roots of our histories. Every act of kindness, every step toward understanding, every effort to see the human story in another's eyes, this is the true legacy of these prophets and sages. As you go forward, remember that religion is not a weapon nor a shield for fear. It is a guide, a teacher, a gentle nudge toward love, justice, and harmony. When we see the echoes of Abraham in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, when we notice the universal threads woven through Hinduism, Buddhism, and all ancient wisdom, we begin to understand that the story is bigger than any one of us. So take these stories, carry them with you, and let them challenge the assumptions you hold. Let them inspire you to ask questions, to seek truth, and to live a life of empathy and respect toward all beings. And as this video comes to a close, remember, these are not just stories from the past. They are living lessons, waiting for each of us to walk through them, learn from them, and continue the journey.